Downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
Ladies and gentlemen, guess what? We're back. Special edition of the Buckeye Leafcast. With your hosts, I am Mr. Andy Evans, and rocking the other side of the microphone, he is going to break some serious stuff down for us in this show, ladies and gentlemen, and I can't wait to get his esteemed, heralded opinion on what's going on right now with some Ohio State football, because there's big stuff to talk about, and of course I am talking about the one and only, the man, Mr. Chris Stefanick, the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan himself.
Mr. Evans, how you doing?
Mr. Stefanick, I'm doing well, sir. How's things in your world going on?
Well, I've been 6 days, 15 hours, and 13 minutes without food, but who's counting? You know.
I saw some posts from you on Facebook. What's going on with this fasting deal? You're literally not eating any food at all?
Right. So the first 6 days was what's called a water fast, which means I can have water and electrolytes, and I would have a glass of tea in the morning as well. I like my morning tea, but that was it. Like I wouldn't even put normally I have cream in my tea, but it was just no cream in the tea, just plain tea.
Huh. Okay.
And that was the first 6 days. This is day 7, the final day. I'm doing what they call a dry fast, which is not even any water. So.
Are you trying to achieve some sort of zen in your life? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to maybe hallucinate without the use of drugs? I mean, what's the purpose of doing this?
Right. So my primary purpose is just for cancer prevention. So
okay.
It's phenomenal for killing off cancer cells and precancer cells. So actually, if you have cancer, it's a great way to treat your cancer. Much better for you than chemo. Of course, all cancers are not the same. Some are different than others. Some of them you're going to still want chemo, but it's pretty fascinating. If you just Google cancer and fasting and look at some of the research that's out there, it's really, really interesting.
You're making me a little nervous, dude. Are you trying to say that you've got some cancer you're trying to beat here?
No, it's just prevention. So it also
okay.
Cancer cells as well.
Okay.
So yes, that was the primary thing. But fasting does all kinds of other great things. It's like, people do these like cleanses, like, they'll give themselves enemas and they'll do like
you're right. You clean it out, baby. Get a colonic.
By far the best. I mean, nothing else is even the best cleanse that you can have is to do a fast. So what happens is your body, when it's not having a constant stream of food, it will start looking at like, okay, what sick and weak cells do I have around the body? And I'm just going to eat them. And it'll eat them and it'll replace them with healthy cells. And this is natural. And, in nature, if you look around at mammals, almost all mammals fast. The lion eats like a pig, then lays around for a couple days and then starts hunting again. It's there are a few exceptions to this. Cattle graze all day long every day. But in general, mammals and even just animals in general and the closest relatives to the human race, the apes and the like, they all fast. And it's only because we have agriculture. Before when we were cavemen and the like, we were fasting as well. So it's normal. And what happens in our modern society, we have food constantly available. So the body never does this natural process of cleaning up the weak and sickly cells. And so you end up with like this toxic state inside your body. So fasting is phenomenal for cleansing. It's, all kinds of other areas, like your brain will grow in size. Your brain will get bigger and you'll get smarter when you're fasting. Just kind of cool, like the different stuff. There's a whole laundry list. I don't want to make the show about fasting, but cancer prevention, just because I try to do everything right for my health. I'm really health conscious, with the exercise and the diet and all of that, and the stress management and the getting good sleep. But like you can do everything right and still get cancer and die at 45. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm like, what can I do to help combat cancer? And I'm like, fasting. This will actually prevent it. So, once a year, January, I do a week-long fast.
Huh. Well, good for you. I mean, I never knew that fasting could have so many positive effects on the body, especially when it comes to, curing or at least minimizing the effects of cancer, trying to defeat it in that sense. But, well, that's good that you're doing it in prevention, not because you're trying to get rid of it currently. So there you go. everybody. Take it from the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan, who, of course, not only talks college football with me, but does quite a few other things, has the Choice Conversations podcast going on as well. I'm sure you've probably had guests on that podcast. You guys have talked about this kind of thing. And I know if people want to get a little more Chris Stefanick in their life, they go to Choice Conversations. And, I mean, you're over there talking about all sorts of stuff. I get your emails. Always having some interesting messages, trying to be positive and uplifting. But sometimes when I read an email from you initially, I'm thinking, what the hell is he saying here? Like, it's almost, you're saying like, hey, don't focus on reality. Reality's not real. And I start reading this, and I'm like, what? Oh, okay, it all makes sense in the end. But I love your messages. They're great. And anybody else out there that wants to have a little positivity in their life, sign up at Choice Conversations. They go through choiceconversations.com, right, and can sign up for your emails that way, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, if you go to books.choiceconversations.com, that'll get you there. I'm working on rebuilding the Choice Conversations website, and it'll be clearer. So when you go to choiceconversations.com, you'll see where to sign up. But right now, books.choiceconversations.com if you're wanting my emails, and that also will give you my recommendations for recommended reading. If you go to books.choiceconversations.com.
So there you go. All right. Hey, you know what? You feel like talking about some football now, or?
Hell fucking yeah.
Or do we just go ahead and end it now? I mean, we've had a pretty productive 15 minutes or so here, and we haven't even talked about the Buckeyes and some of the big news going on. So let's dive into a couple things, Chris. A couple of weeks ago, in fact, just right after, January 9th, January 10th. So, it's been almost a month ago now. The Buckeyes hired in their 10th assistant coach, which is now allowed. The NCAA passed a rule saying that now all college coaching staffs can have 10 guys on the staff. And they hired in Alex Grinch from Washington State. And Alex Grinch, coming from the Cougars after the last 3 years, had done amazing things with their defense. Took them from they were a terrible defense and had them as one of the top 20 defenses in the country just after 3 years. That's how good of a job he did with them. So he leaves, but now, Chris, he leaves Washington State, comes to Ohio State, and now, Chris, we have a coach who leaves, and Kerry Combs is now going to take his talents to the next level. He's heading down to Tennessee to be Mike Vrabel's secondary coach. So we get an Alex Grinch. We lose Kerry Combs. What kind of impact do you see from both coaches, being positive, negative? I mean, this is a great move for Kerry Combs, and I'm glad and happy for him because he was one hell of a coach here. More importantly, I think, he was one hell of a recruiter. And, I think the Buckeyes and Urban Meyer are going to miss that a little bit. But, what's your take on the whole thing? Obviously, bringing in Alex Grinch can't be a bad thing, but we're going to see exactly what his coaching style and his recruiting style are going to be like as opposed to Kerry Combs. Yeah,
Alex Grinch is a guy who grew up in Ohio, and, out in Washington State. I mean, I think they were in 120, the 120th defense in the country or something like that.
Bad.
It took them up to don't quote me on this, but it was top 20. It was 16th defense in the country or something like that. And this is in the Pac-12 where, they're pretty big on high-flying offenses and stuff. For anyone in the Pac-12 to have a top 20 defense is tough.
Yeah, they don't play defense in the Pac-12. Come on.
Right, exactly. They don't play defense, and the offenses are really good. So, what he had done was incredible. When they first hired him, I'm like, oh my God, this guy is leaving. He's got a coordinator position at a, Power 5 school, and he's coming to Ohio State to just be another assistant. What the hell's going on here? And then I started reading more into it and found out it was they had hired him when Tennessee had offered the head coaching job to Schiano. So he was totally coming in to replace Schiano. And then, the whole debacle with Tennessee pulling the rug out from under basically the fan base of Tennessee revolting and causing the administration to panic and take away the job offer.
I can't believe they did that. I seriously can't. That's just crazy to me that that big of an outcry on social media caused a guy to not get hired as a head coach. But I guess in a way, I can understand, because there's your fan base. Maybe not everybody, but enough people on social media caused that big of a shitstorm to make the administration not want to hire him in. And I guess they kind of saw that as, well, look at how many people are pissed off. They're probably not going to be coming to the games. They're not going to be supporting our team. We're not going to make any money. We can't hire this guy. But it's still kind of crazy to me that big of a social media shitstorm happened to where they ended up not hiring him because of that.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, there was no evidence. That's the thing. So
exactly.
It's one thing if there's evidence. Yeah, I would be probably joining the outcry. But there was no evidence. So that's where it's just like a witch hunt. There was
stupid.
Yeah, exactly. But so then I'm like, okay, it makes sense now. And Meyer just told him, look, we'll make you co-coordinator. It's probably only going to be for a year because lots of people would love to have Schiano as a head coach. And then, so you hold the fort down as co-coordinator for a year, and then we'll go ahead and promote you to full-on coordinator. So I'm like, okay, yeah, going from defensive coordinator at Washington State to defensive coordinator at Ohio State, that is a little bit of a bump up. And, if he's great, knocks their socks off, someday Urban's got to retire, where Grinch is really young. This is another potential candidate to come in and be that head coach somewhere down the road. It's for whatever reason, people always like to hire someone that's got a strong Ohio tie whenever you get the head coaching position filled. So I guess it's
sure
that horrible memories of John Cooper. Never.
John, yeah, exactly. I think John Cooper kind of. I don't know what the word I want to use is, but yeah, John Cooper came in, was not an Ohio guy, and you saw the result. Terrible bowl record, even worse record against Michigan, and now the last two coaches have been Ohio guys, and you've seen exactly what the results have been with guys like Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, who are from the state. So maybe they, I don't want to necessarily say that's a bad thing. I hope they don't look too far into hiring Ohio guys, but quite frankly, I love it. And I thought after John Cooper, when they finally fired him, I thought and felt they need an Ohio guy. They need someone to come in here who understands the Michigan rivalry, who understands what it means to be a Buckeye. And they did that with Tressel, and I'm glad they did. But, Alex Grinch, I mean, he's got that Ohio tie. I think it's going to be he's going to know exactly, coming in here, what it takes and means to be a Buckeye. At least you would think, being from the state.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. We went from being just awful in the rivalry versus that team up north to completely turning it around to where now we've completely reversed the Cooper years.
Oh, reversed it and then some.
Right.
Yep.
And if you look at it, what was the difference? Well, back when Cooper was in there, Michigan could come in and get their fair share of Ohio kids. You looked at the top kids in Ohio coming out, which Ohio has the most Division I recruits of any of the schools in the Big Ten, of all the states rather, where there's Big Ten schools.
Oh, yeah.
And Michigan would come in and get the top kids. And in Michigan, whenever there's been really great Michigan teams, they've always had stars from Ohio.
Yep.
Since Tressel and Urban have come in, I mean, Michigan has not won head-to-head battles in recruiting with Ohio State. Almost none. I mean, we're talking, a 17-year span now. I think 2001 was Tressel's first year. I mean, you could count the victories that Michigan has had head-to-head with Ohio State on one hand. Michigan's had a lot more than 5 kids from Ohio over that 17 years. But most of those kids that they got, Ohio State didn't consider them good enough to give an offer to. So they're going after the kids that they're like Ohio State's leftovers for the most part. And there's just been very few exceptions along the way where Michigan has actually beat Ohio for a kid, beat Ohio State for an Ohio kid. So, and that's, I mean, it's turned the programs completely around where Michigan's now not even really an elite program. I mean, how could you say they are based on, the last 15, 17 years? I mean, they haven't done anything since 2006. So that's been a pretty big deal. But going back to the whole point of Grinch and all of that, I always like to make sure that there's a large pool of candidates with Ohio connections that would be really strong coaching candidates. Because if you remember back when they were hiring Jim Tressel in 2001, it almost went to Glenn Mason. The alumni really wanted Mason.
I know.
And it was, I've got to give credit to whoever made the decision. I don't know if it was what's his name at the athletic director,
Andy Geiger.
And I don't know if it was Andy Geiger made that decision or it's probably the board of governors. I'm sure he couldn't make it on his own. He had to have permission from the board of governors. But thank God they had the back to stand up to the alumni, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, are you kidding me? This is Ohio State. Glenn Mason, I mean, I love the guy, but he is a mediocre coach. I mean,
he had what, maybe 1 or 2 decent enough seasons at Minnesota.
And it's like it was an overreaction to the John Cooper years. We got to hire a guy that's an Ohio guy, you know. I'm like, oh my God, please don't hire a mediocre coach just because you want to make sure you get an Ohio guy.
Right.
And Michigan did the exact same thing with Brady Hoke. Brady Hoke had a losing record before he went to Michigan. I'm like, I was laughing at the Michigan folks. They're like, oh, we got a Michigan guy now. You know, we tried bringing in a guy who wasn't a Michigan guy, and you know, Dick Rod, and that didn't work. You know, it was like John Cooper all over again, except, you know, for the team up north, we got a Michigan guy now.
Right, right.
Like, are you kidding me? This guy is mediocre.
I'll be honest
hired
with
at
you.
a Pat school.
I kind of thought the same thing when they hired Hoke. I thought, okay, they do got a Michigan guy. Like, he's coached there before, so on and so forth. You know, he's going to, you know, turn them around, get them going in the right direction, which, quite frankly, he did. The first year, you know, 2011, I mean, they went like 11-2. They beat Virginia Tech in the Orange Bowl, won a BCS Bowl, had a great season, beat Ohio State finally. But then after that, I mean, we saw Brady Hoke for what he really was, and that was
yeah.
So
right. Anyway,
so Grinch is coming in now. Kerry Combs is stepping out, and what kind of impact do you think this is going to have on the defense, the recruiting? Is there going to be an impact? Do we see somebody else stepping in now and filling in Kerry Combs' role? Are they just going to bring on another 10th assistant to fill some other role and maybe promote somebody else? What do you see any fallout here from Kerry Combs taking off for Tennessee?
Well, the biggest thing that Kerry Combs brought to the team, not the biggest thing that he brought to me. The biggest thing he brought to me was just that enthusiasm on the sidelines. My God, it was a joy to watch on the sidelines.
Yes, he was.
He was just so animated and excited. I'm like, you couldn't help but like smile and get pumped up yourself watching him.
Yeah.
And my God, if there was like a 30-yard kick return or something, you would have thought they just won the Super Bowl or something. You know, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So there's that, but the way he developed these cornerbacks, I mean, the run that Ohio State has had on first-round draft picks, and I think they've all been pretty much first-round draft picks. They're the cornerbacks. It's like basically if you start at Ohio State, you're going to be a freaking first-round draft pick. That's been the trend here for like the last 3-4 years, and I don't know that we're ever going to see a trend like that again. This might be as good as it gets as far as player development, making elite cornerbacks that we're going to see at Ohio State. It's hard to imagine it's not going to return back towards the norm a little bit. You know what I mean? It's just how can we, you know, this guy must be like the best in the world at that. I mean, that's pretty much what it looks like to me. I mean, the only argument to that is it was just talent, and he just got lucky that he got a bunch of talented guys. And I don't know. I mean, you see schools getting tons of talent and nothing happening with it, because they're not good at developing the talent. You know, it makes me think of the offensive line at Ohio State in the Tressel years was terrible. He'd get these, you know, high recruited kids, and Bowman would never be able to develop them, and they never turned into anything. They never got better. Then first year, Urban brings in Werner, and with the exact same guys, Bowman's guys, he takes them. The offensive line was like a liability in 2011. Was awful. By the end of 2012, it was the strength of the team. They were just dominating people, and I'm like, the same guy. You know, I'm like, wow. So this is what it means. This is what it looks like when you have a guy who knows how to develop players. You know, it's a huge difference. Talent only goes so far. You know, you got Malik Hooker, was a guy who was a 3-star guy, and he ended up being like pretty much the best defensive player in the freaking Big Ten. You know, and the only reason Peppers got the defensive MVP was just because of the hype train. If you look at statistically, Hooker was better than Peppers in every measurable way, but he just didn't have the same PR campaign. So we're going to really miss, I think, his player development. His player development was elite. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, I definitely think that Ohio State is going to miss, more than anything, I mean, his enthusiasm. I think that's really what he brought to the table, was his attitude, his enthusiasm, his passion, and that obviously then parlayed over into his job and created, these beasts at the corner position. And to your point, you said, is it pulling in just talented guys? Did he get lucky? Well, certainly that helps, obviously, right? But yeah, you see other teams out there that pull in, talented guys, and they can't develop them. So it's funny because I remember back when Kerry Combs and I believe Everett Withers was the defensive coordinator there when Urban first started, and they were giving up tons of yards through the air. You remember, their passing defense was just horrible when Urban first got here. And I remember you and I having Buckeye Leafcast where we were talking about, Kerry Combs and his coaching style and this, play the player, don't play the ball, don't look back for the ball, just play the player. And as soon as he makes a catch, you do this rake and rip deal, which I still don't agree with. I say you always play the ball, you don't play the player and then try and swat it out of his hands afterwards. But you can see where Combs has come along in his development, because the guys aren't always necessarily just playing the player and trying this rake and rip. I mean, 2016, case in point. I mean, how many interceptions did that defense have? And they led the country with 7 returned for touchdowns. So I think, though, that, Kerry Combs, I mean, he definitely came along, had obviously great, talented guys that he was able to develop through his enthusiasm and his passion for the game. He was able to, turn, like you said, this may be something that Ohio State fans, hopefully we don't get used to this, because we're losing the coach who got us used to this and having several first-round picks. I mean, just last year there were 2 corners. I mean, you had both Conley and Lattimore go in the first round. The year before that was Eli Apple. A lot of people give him credit for Bradley Roby in 2014 when Roby got drafted the next to last pick in the first round. Duran Grant, then I think in 2015, he was drafted in the 4th round. So all of a sudden, bang, 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 you get all these corners that are getting drafted, high in the NFL draft, and that's saying something. That's got to be saying something for Kerry Combs, and I definitely don't think he just got lucky. I think that because of the talent that he had and his enthusiasm and passion, he was able to get things done. And I'm hoping that whoever steps in his place can be half of that, because if they can, then I think the cornerbacks are still going to be in good shape. But I think this is going to hurt a little bit, Chris. I do.
Right. Well, and then, you talk about recruiting. Well, nothing makes it easier to recruit than going into, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old's living room and saying, you want to make millions someday? Look at all these guys I've just sent to the NFL. We're the number 1 school in the country at sending defensive backs to the NFL.
Yep.
So come here. We'll turn you into the next, Marshawn Lattimore, the next Malik Hooker.
All right.
I mean, these guys are, elite at their position. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore might be like the number 1 corner in the NFL right now, as just completing his rookie season. So they are, that was a powerful, powerful recruiting tool. And, well, here's another thing. Combs was a Cincinnati guy. He coached school in Cincinnati. He was a head coach at school and coached at, I believe he coached at the University of Cincinnati for a while as well.
He was, Brian Kelly's assistant for a few seasons.
Yeah, and he is just highly respected in Cincinnati. And through the Tressel years, it was like, Tressel's finally taken back Ohio. He's put a fence around Ohio. But there was always like the asterisks, except Cincinnati. Cincinnati, it's still like a roll of the dice, maybe 50-50 shot. We get a elite kid coming out of Cincinnati, because they would end up going to like Notre Dame or just somewhere else, because Cincinnati is the one city in Ohio where all the kids don't grow up bleeding scarlet and gray. You know, it's like Cincinnati or Cincinnati, USA. It's not Cincinnati, Ohio. And, you know, the number one high school programs in that town also happen to be Catholic schools. So there's a draw to then go to college at Notre Dame to go to Catholic college.
Yep.
So it's just hard for Ohio State, relatively hard to pull kids out of Cincinnati than it is out of Cleveland or Toledo or, you know, Dayton or all these other places, right? So that turned around when Urban brought in Combs. I mean, they didn't win all the battles in Cincinnati, still lost a few kids to Notre Dame, but the number of kids they won really turned up quite a bit. So that's tough. You know, I don't know that we're going to get Cincinnati back with Grinch. I think, you know, hopefully Grinch is a good recruiter, but yeah, this is definitely a loss, and it's a loss that Urban, he did not see coming. Word is from insiders and all of that, this completely blindsided them. You know, they expected Shano to be hired away, but, you know, I think they pretty much thought Combs was going to just, you know, retire at Ohio State and, you know, maybe get promoted to defensive coordinator at some point. But, I mean, I think he already had some kind of role. He had some kind of special role besides being just defensive backs coach. I don't remember exactly what it was. He had something else. He had gotten promoted, and he had something else added to his title.
Yeah, he was co-defensive coordinator.
See, okay, so yeah. You know, maybe.
And he was special teams coach, too.
Right. So I think, you know, they didn't expect him to leave. And, you know, what will they do with that 10th spot? I think if they get a guy they really like, an elite kind of guy, or maybe a young guy with a lot of promise, they'll fill it. Otherwise, I think they might just wait and bank it and see, you know, wait till somebody they really like becomes available.
So, switching gears to the offense here, what's the deal with Ryan Day? He's going to leave. He's not going to leave. He gets promoted. He's now just the offensive coordinator. There's no co anymore in front of his name. He's the offensive coordinator, yet Kevin Wilson is still on the staff. And supposedly Day and Wilson are still going to be working together. What's going on with this?
Well, it's hard to not view it as a demotion for Kevin Wilson.
Yeah.
But Ryan Day, he had well, first of all, he had offers for head coaching positions in the SEC. Now, we don't know which ones. Maybe they were dog crap SEC jobs. Maybe it was like Arkansas, where it's like, no, that's all right. I don't really want to go be a head coach so badly that I'm going to just take a job where I'm going to get pounded every week in and week out. And I can understand that. But he had head coaching offers. He had offers to be the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans with Mike Vrabel. So he you know, what this was a response to that. Say, hey, don't leave for the Titans. We'll keep you here. We'll make you offensive coordinator. And, you know, apparently Day must be really stinking good. He must have his eyes on being, I believe he's got to have his eyes on being a college head coach, because otherwise, why would you not go to the NFL to be the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans? I mean, as much as I love college football, and I love it more than I love the NFL by a lot, that's where it's the elite level of football is in the NFL. And the 32 best offensive coordinator positions in the world reside in the NFL. And he turned down one of the 32 best jobs in the world to stay at Ohio State. So he must want to be a head coach, and he's going to, you know, be offensive coordinator at Ohio State another year, maybe another 2 years, until he gets that offer from a program he thinks he can win at and go there. And, you know, I'm thrilled to have him for another year or two, you know, because I think he's a promising young coach. Obviously, other people feel the same way. They're, you know, everybody and their brothers offering him positions apparently. And again, when that day comes, you know, knock on wood, that Urban retires, I want there to be a large pool of highly qualified elite coaches that have ties to Ohio State, and he makes another one of those. So, because, you know, otherwise I just don't want them to hire, you know, the next Glenn Mason, right? I'm like, let that not ever let that coaching pool be large with people with Ohio ties.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wish him the best, and I'm glad he's going to be year, and I think it'll be good for Dwayne Haskins and or whoever it is that gets the QB position. So
I know a lot of us want to just anoint Haskins as being the heir apparent to the quarterback position for next year, but yeah, let's not forget there's still Joe Burrow. I think it's either Haskins or Burrow. I'm sorry, I still cannot see Tate Martell beating out either of those two. Quite frankly, that's just my opinion. I do think if anything, it's going to be Haskins, but. Whoever comes in to coach those guys, or not whoever, but now that they brought Ryan Day back, if you will, or didn't let him leave in the first place. He's definitely going to have a huge impact on whoever's playing quarterback, and I'm glad that they brought him back. Made me a little nervous to think he might already be leaving. So Urban. Obviously, sweetened up. I mean, they cut him a sweet deal, gave him that offensive coordinator title. I mean, Urban was willing to do that for somebody below Kevin Wilson and almost demote Kevin Wilson. What does this say about Kevin Wilson? Like you said, how can we not view this as being a demotion for Kevin Wilson? I mean, what's Kevin Wilson going to do? Is he still going to basically be the offensive coordinator, but Ryan Day just has it in title, but Kevin's still going to be calling the plays? I mean, Buckeye Nation still hasn't found out exactly what this all means, and we may not find out until the spring game when, they have Urban get up there and talk at the podium for a few minutes after the game, post-game presser. But maybe in the meantime, somebody's going to find out exactly what this whole Kevin Wilson being demoted, or is it a demotion, Ryan Day being promoted, or is it a promotion kind of thing. I don't know. I'm just confused about it all, Chris.
Yeah, I think that Kevin Wilson is still basically going to be a coordinator alongside of Day. And throughout Urban's tenure, he's had multiple coordinators on both sides of the ball pretty much the entire time. And I think it's going to be a team effort where maybe they're both calling plays, or they're both heavily involved in the game plan, and maybe Day is calling more of the plays. But that's assuming Urban isn't just going to call them regardless, because a lot of times, it's Urban is making that call throughout the year. So maybe neither of them is calling the plays.
Maybe so.
They're involved in the game plan. They're watching from the booth, and
here
Urban, here's what's going on. Now use that information and decide what play you're going to call.
Yeah, maybe so. I guess we're gonna find out. But nonetheless, very interesting news.
Say this.
Few shakeups there on the coaching staff.
I think Kevin Wilson is going to be with Ohio State long either, because he got ran out of town in Indiana over nothing, basically because they just didn't like him. They didn't like his personality. Somebody in I don't know if his board of governors, athletic director, somebody didn't like him. Their personalities clashed and ran out of town what was like the best football coach Indiana's had in a long time, and he's going to be able to get a good job. He's definitely not going to have to take an Arkansas type of job to get a job, because his resume is squeaky clean, and he's proven he's a phenomenal coach. He's a phenomenal offensive coordinator. I mean, the offenses at Indiana were amazing. The offenses at Oklahoma won Heisman winners. Were amazing there too.
I know.
They've maybe not been amazing at Ohio State, but that's because he doesn't even get to call the plays. So we're not really getting to see a Kevin Wilson offense, and what we've seen on the field is not what Kevin Wilson does. Kevin Wilson has pocket passers, not running quarterbacks. So maybe next year, if it is Dwayne Haskins that gets the starting position, we'll see what a real Kevin Wilson offense looks like. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Wilson is not long for Ohio State. Let me just say that. He's too hot of a commodity, and I got to believe he wants a chance to be the head man again.
I don't see him lasting much longer here. I mean, let's face it. I think the new norm, what Urban Meyer's going to do, is bring in these hotsy-totsy guys who had major success as offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators that at one point were a head coach somewhere and did very well, or whatever the case is, and now they're looking for a job. He brings them in. They're going to stick around for 2 years and then take off. And, look at Shiano. That was what it was going to happen. He was here for 2 years. The only reason he's here for a third is because the Volunteers didn't want him. Social media spoke out and said, we don't want you. Kevin Wilson, yeah, I can totally see him leaving for somewhere next year. I mean, I'm sure after this upcoming 2018 season, some team's going to fire their coach and they're going to be looking for a new one. And I can see him jumping ship. Absolutely. I don't see him sticking around and wanting to be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State and for Urban Meyer, especially if he gets demoted. And I mean, on the Ohio State's official website, I'm trying to think here. Does Kevin Wilson, let me see if he has it's still, here's what's funny. The football coaching staff, I mean, the official Ohio State website, ohiostatebuckeyes.com, when you go to the coaching staff, support staff, I mean, Kevin Wilson still has offensive coordinator listed under his name, and Ryan Day is co-offensive coordinator. I mean, hell, Kerry Combs is still on this page, so I guess that really doesn't mean anything. But it's, I don't know. This whole thing is just mind-boggling to me. But like you said, maybe we're, it's Urban's show regardless. And, titles don't mean crap because Urban's still got a little bit of a stranglehold on this offense and how it's to be run. So, something I wanted to touch on, though, dude. You sent me a couple articles per 247 Sports, and it was actually, they got it from Pro Football Focus. Now, explain to me and everybody else out there exactly what is Pro Football Focus. What is their deal? They're a website, and I know they deal specifically with, analytics and stuff like that, correct?
Right. So what they do is, every single play, and apparently every football game, be it NFL or Division I football, I don't know how many people they have on staff or how they're doing this, that they've got amazing AIs. I can't imagine they have amazing AIs because AIs aren't at the level of being able to do this. But every play, every football game, every player, they're giving them a grade. Every play, every game, every play, every player is getting a grade. They tally that up. And then they have some scoring system where they say, okay, if your score comes out to, 91 or plus, you're elite. I'm just pulling these numbers out of the air. But if your score is, 82 to 85 or 91 or whatever, then you're very good. Or between this range, you're good. Between here, you're just average. And here, you're not so good, and so on, and then go down the line. And so you can look at game by game. You can say, oh, this person had a really good game, or during this one game, this player was elite. You can also look at for the whole season, tally it all up, and do that. And so what they did is Pro Football Focus, they released, here are the top players for Ohio State. Here's every player ranked from 1 through, and I only saw through 25. I think you have to pay to get the really good stuff, and I'm not a paying member, so I just took whatever 24/7 put out there, which gave the top 25 players in order on Ohio State's list. And it's pretty interesting. For the most part, it's really good. There are some exceptions where you're wondering how that player got that grade. But overall, it's an interesting way to measure it, And so what was your thinking?
Okay. I think that Pro Football Focus is trying to look too hard in analyzing certain aspects of a player's game. And so they came out with this list of the top 25 players for the Buckeyes this past season. And they based it on these analytics and these numbers and doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at this list, and I'm not sure exactly what numbers they're basing these things off of, because to put Sam Hubbard in a tie with Jordan Fuller at 14th, and yet Dante Booker supposedly had a better season and was a better player for Ohio State than Sam Hubbard was. I'm sorry, I take exception to that, and I think this whole thing is completely bogus.
So here's where I will call out some of the things you said. First of all, you said these are the Ohio State's 25 best players. That isn't what it says. It's saying this is the 25 players who scored the highest in this particular statistical ranking. So there's that. And an example of that is you have a guy like Brady Taylor coming in at number 23, who, according to this statistical ranking, he had enough snaps coming in mop-up time to get on here. You had to have a certain number, it was like 200 or 300 snaps or something like that. Playing in mop-up time, he got enough of them to get on the list. And he comes in at number 23. Nobody, including all the people at Pro Football Focus, are going to say Brady Taylor was one of Ohio State's top 23 players. He only played in mop-up time. And in this statistic, how good would he have been if all his snaps had come against starters instead of backups? How good would would this particular stat have been? Not nearly as good. But that's not what they're measuring. They're not measuring how good were they. They're measuring how do they grade out in this stat. So it's the same thing that you see in in stats in any other area. So you might see a guy, you look at a score and you're like, you're watching like a basketball game, you look at the box score and you're like, these scrubs the team you're looking at got blown out, and the scrubs all have like a plus minus of 10 points. The starters were like minus 30 or something, and you're like, what the hell? How are the scrubs really that much better than starters? It's like, no. The starters, when the game was still in question, got their asses handed to them. That's why they got the minus 30. Then when it went to garbage time, they put in the backups, and the backups outscored the opponent's backups by 10 points. But it didn't matter. It was a blowout. Nobody even cared. Nobody was even really trying hard, and the best players weren't out there. So it's a stat, and you have to just keep that in mind as you're looking at this. And the other thing I would point out as well, you talked about Hubbard. Now Baker is really the only one that's on here that I would say is a head scratcher. Because all the other guys, like Brady Taylor, I'm like, Brady Taylor played really well when he was on the field versus scrubs. I can see how he got number 23 in this statistic. Booker's the one outlier. If you just toss Booker out, I think it's pretty solid. And you might say, well, Hubbard was a better player to this team than, say, like Hubbard was at 14th, Tuff Borland's at 8, or Brandon Bowen's at 9. You need to keep in mind, this is like an average per play of like, were they doing their job on their play? Now, Hubbard made some big plays, but if you make 5 big plays in a game and you disappear the rest of the game, how good is your overall score going to be? As compared to somebody who maybe doesn't make any big plays, but they do their job every single play, they might actually get a higher grade because they were doing their job. They weren't like, losing half the time and then making a good play here and there. You know what I mean? It's like if you get your report card and you had FFFF and a couple A's,
which would be true to form for me. Yeah.
I mean, imagine you have over the course of a quarter, you have a spattering of F's and a couple A's. You're not going to expect to come out and be like, well, look, I got a couple A's, man. I was an all-star on these couple days I came in and nailed it. You're not going to get an A. At best you're looking at maybe a C. Or if somebody else comes in as like B, 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 B consistently, day after day at school they're getting B's, you're going to look at their report card, it's going to be a B. It's going to grade out higher than the guy who had some A's and some F's. So that's where you can see guys like, Brandon Bowen. Brandon Bowen went down early, but statistically he graded out as one of the best players for the offensive line. He graded out third best. When the plays he was in there, he was the third best after Jamarco Jones and Isaiah Prince, which brings me to something I wanted to bring up. Next year, my biggest concerns for the offensive line my biggest concerns for the team as a whole next year with the offensive line, because they're replacing Billy Price. They're replacing Jamarco Jones. I feel like they're replacing somebody else. Are they replacing a bit?
Well, no, yeah, because Michael Jordan will be a junior. Isaiah Prince will be a senior. Is Brandon Bowen coming back? Is it going to be Demetrius Knox? He's a fourth-year junior. So, yeah, only Jamarco Jones and Billy Price are they losing. But, yeah, no, definitely question marks on the offensive line. But anyways,
the ninth
continue,
best
please.
player on the team, the third best offensive lineman overall, Brandon Bowen, is coming back. We didn't have him last year. So we're getting back a guy who I think if he's healthy, I think he's going to beat out Demetrius Knox, because Demetrius Knox was clearly the worst offensive lineman on the team. He did not grade out well all year long. So I'm like, yeah, we're losing Jamarco Jones, which was number 3 best player on the team according to this statistic, number 1 offensive lineman. But Isaiah Prince was number 2 offensive lineman. He clocked in at number 6 overall on the team. Isaiah Prince was pretty good. I think they'll probably slide him over to that left tackle position maybe move up Thayer Mumford from the backup right tackle, who they're really high on him, to make him the starting right tackle. So it's not like a guy who's not had any reps at all. He got those reps in as a backup. And then you replace Demetrius Knox, a guy who stunk, with Brandon Bowen, who was a top 10 guy. And then if you want, I don't know who's going to win that center position, but Brady Taylor did make the top 25, and he's had a whole lot of reps at Ohio State, be they in practice or on the field, being a fifth-year senior coming in. And when he did get his shot, he got on the field. He scored well. I mean, he checks in at number 23 on the team and beat out guys like Demetrius Knox. Granted, he was playing against backups, where Demetrius Knox half the year was playing against starters. But, there's a lot of experience there if he does get the job at center. Now he's got some young bucks he's going to have to fight off. But I was looking at this, and I'm like, because it's so hard to evaluate offensive linemen, because they only really jump out to you when they're like making a mistake. They're offsides, or they give up a sack, or maybe they're making a big block for a touchdown run or something, and they go back and highlight it on film. It's just there's so many. There's 22 players running around at like superhuman speed. It's hard to like take it all in, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, we're losing two guys, but we're replacing them right away with a veteran, Brandon Bowen, who's graded out as good as pretty much any of them. So that got me a little excited.
Well, it's there are some offensive linemen where it's time for them to step up. And unfortunately, though, they have lost some a handful of guys the last couple of years, have either transferred, didn't end up committing when they were committed. That whole kid, that one kid down there from Portsmouth that committed but then left before he even came to campus. Some weird situation. I can't remember the whole thing, but there's still some guys that, it's time for them to step up. There's going to be obviously a couple open shots. I'm with you. I think that they slide Prince from right tackle to left tackle. You've got a Brady Taylor who I think could come in and play center, like you said. I mean, he's at least a fourth-year junior coming up, so a lot of time here in the program. You're going to have Michael Jordan there at the left guard. Right guard, let's hope that Brandon Bowen comes back healthy. If not, then is it Matthew Burrell? Is it Demetrius Knox? I mean, is it even somebody else? But I just found these analytics very interesting. I see what you're saying in that Pro Football Focus is trying to grade out on certain aspects, but my point is when you get into the article itself, I mean, it's a little deceiving then if that's not the case, that these really weren't the best players on the team, because, I mean, it clearly states here, who were the 15 best players on Ohio State's team in 2017 per the grades from Pro Football Focus. And then it says, an 85 and up is considered, they were considered to be an elite player that season. From 80 to 84.9, you were considered very good. Then below that, good, average, below average, poor. So, I mean, they are giving grades. They are saying that, per their analytics, these are the guys that, were the best players on the team. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I just take exception to this list. I mean, don't get me wrong. They got Nick Bosa number one. Do I think Nick Bosa was the best guy on the defense? Well, by numbers, no. But probably just from an overall standpoint of coming with it and having that, creating disturbances. There were a lot of plays that Nick Bosa was in that, he created flustered the quarterback and created whatever you want to call it. But I don't know. I'm sorry. I look at some people on this list and I'm just like, no offense. I get it that, there are guys out there who want to break things down because they just are, that's just what they like to do. They like to look at the game in a different way and break things down and this and that and blah, blah, blah. My thing is I just want to watch the game, and I can see right there and then, was Dante Booker a better player than Sam Hubbard this year? Absolutely friggin' not. Not in my opinion. I mean, I don't care what the analytics say. Sam Hubbard was head and shoulders better than Dante Booker this year. I mean, Dante Booker got friggin' sat on the bench That's how bad he was playing this year. Tough Borland came in and took his job. And then they had to slide Chris Worley over and then bring Malik Harrison in at times. I mean, Booker did not have a great year. Booker was a disappointing player, and we'll see if he comes back, for his senior year this year. But I'm sorry, Dante Booker was not better than Sam Hubbard. And I know you said he was a head scratcher, but there were guys even ahead of Sam Hubbard who I didn't feel like had a better year, like Jerome Baker. Draymond Jones, I mean, that's kind of hard because they're both defensive linemen. But I don't know. Some guys on this list, I mean, like Brandon Bowen. I mean, he ranked 9th. And I'm sorry, a guy who got hurt and was only there for, 5 or 6 games of the season and then didn't play the rest of the year. I get it that when he was in there, he was supposedly performing well, but not that well. Not to be the 9th best guy on the team. I'm sorry. There's just some things on this list I just take exception to, and maybe I'm not getting it, but I'm sorry, Chris, I just don't get it, and I think some of this, I think this list is just silly. It's silly.
Well, I mean, there's average, how did you perform per play, and then there's how did you perform over, like what were your overall contribution to the team, which would include quantity. So this is just looking at quality, no quantity involved, and if you do quality and quantity together, then yeah, you're going to get guys like Brandon Bowen's not going to make the list. Brady Taylor's not going to make the list. A lot of the defensive linemen aren't going to make the list. Nick Bosa's not going to be number 1 if you do quality and quantity because he only played 40 plays a game, or it wasn't even that many.
Yeah, something like that, I'd say, probably, sure.
He was not out there a lot. They rotated guys a lot. So defensive linemen are going to have a hard time making the list if they do quality and quantity together. So, I mean, that's just one of the things to keep in mind. What is this actually measuring? I blame the journalists for kind of spinning it as who are the 25 best players. That's really not what it is. It should have been what 25 players had the highest score on this particular statistic. That's what this is.
Well, then maybe we got to have a talk with the gentleman who wrote this article and, kind of open up his eyes a little bit because he misled me. I feel misled. I'm getting upset over nothing. Or maybe I don't know. Maybe I have a validated point. Maybe not.
So speaking of Draymond Jones,
yeah,
Draymond Jones is one of the very positive stories of this offseason in that he has been for a long time been thought of very highly by NFL scouts, and it was thought he was probably going to go pro.
Oh yeah,
and they always say the biggest recruit Urban got this year was, and you insert the name of the player who should have went to the NFL or could have went to the NFL, but they came back. This year's version of that is Draymond Jones. Urban Meyer's biggest recruit this year was Draymond Jones, getting him to come back. He held Court down in the middle. In this list, graded out as 13, one graded out, I believe, as the number 1 defensive tackle on the team. Yep, looks like the number 1 defensive tackle. And to have him back was good. And, one area on this team, while the quality, speaking of quality and quantity, the quality of the defensive ends is really high. The quantity is not. And Draymond's a guy who can play inside or out. And considering there's a lot more quantity at defensive tackle, I expect them to rotate him outside a few times just because, Larry Johnson likes to rotate his defensive linemen so that everybody, is fresh. So, and I think that also is going to help Draymond's draft stock for next year because he's a little small to be a defensive tackle in the NFL. He's probably going to be like a 3-4 defensive end. So This is going to be good for him, improving his draft stock for maybe a late second, third round pick to top of the second, maybe end of the first. So really huge get to get him to come back. I was not really expecting that.
Yeah, in fact, he misled people, or at least he misled me with his tweet where he said, he started it off basically by saying, I feel like I'm going to take my talents and bring him back to Ohio State. I just kind of glossed over it real quick, and I was like, crap, he's leaving. I sent out a tweet via Columbus Wired saying that he had gone, and then another guy that's writing with me, Ralph Schudel, texts me and says, dude, you got to fix that. He's coming back. I'm like, what? So I pulled up the tweet, and I'm like, oh, crap. All I looked at was I'm taking my talents And I just thought he was saying, he's taking his talents to the next level. But he was saying, if I want to take my talents to the next level, I got to come back for one more year at Ohio State and improve on him. And yeah, here's a guy, like you said, I mean, people were talking about being, possibly a first-round pick. I mean, at least a second-round pick, one of the top defensive linemen going in the draft. And this dude decided to come back. I mean, Chris, I'm telling you what, Ohio State is going to be dangerous next year. I mean, with all the kids coming back, dude, the wide receivers, whoever they decide to play at quarterback is going to have some great receivers to throw the ball to. And, dude, I mean, this defensive line, they're losing some kids, though. That's the thing. And that was so imperative, if you will, or at least extremely important that Draymond Jones came back because, I mean, they're losing Michael Hill. They're losing Sam Hubbard, who else? Tyquan Lewis, Jalen Holmes. I mean, they're losing some defensive linemen, and you said that the offensive line is your one big area of concern for next year, which I'm a little concerned about the offensive line too, but not to say I'm concerned about the defensive line because the talent they have coming in is it's basically next man up, just plug and play and go. But they're losing some guys off of that defensive line that I'm not overly concerned, but it's going to be interesting to see how this defensive line plays next year, and are they going to continue doing what they've done the last couple of seasons and sprinkling in and switching guys out as often as they have, with not having as many guys to possibly switch out with.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say that the defensive line's a concern, or defensive end specifically is a concern, when the starters, when it's all said and done, may just go down as the best starters on any Ohio State defensive line ever. I mean, I think Chase Hubbard, Chase Young are probably both going to be like top 15 draft picks. And I don't know that we've ever started 2 top 15 draft picks, and maybe top 10, top 5 kind of guys. They both have the potential to be top 5 kind of picks. So it's hard to say, that position's a concern when your starters are elite. Nick Bosa, number 1 player in the team. Because he wasn't the most productive because they didn't run at him. But if you watched him play after play after play, he pretty much every single play dominated his guy. And that's why he got the number 1 grade, because every single play he dominated his guy. So I think you're right. The team next year has the potential to really be nasty. And it's just a matter of, can they get the passing game down? Can they get that offense to do well versus elite teams, or versus good teams, I should say, not even elite? Because the offense statistically was great last year, 2017. But that was including all of the year where you're playing teams like Nebraska that they blew out, and the Armies and all of that. What happens when they're playing? When they played like really good teams, they were very mediocre. Michigan, good defense, barely got out of there. They were losing when JT went down, and thank God Dwayne Haskins came in and was able to revive the offense. There was offense very mediocre versus Oklahoma, and so on. Versus good teams, the offense was mediocre. So let's see if they could turn the offensive around so that they're not mediocre to poor versus good teams. I mean, my God, let's not even mention the Iowa game. Then this team, could win it all next year.
Well, it's exactly, dude. Exactly. I mean, this is. I'm serious. Yeah, they are. They're going to be dangerous. I mean, the amount of talent that they have coming back that could have left early. I'm not sure what Urban did to talk a lot of these kids into coming back for their, final season. Guys like, Campbell. I mean, some people were talking about Campbell leaving early. Even Johnny Dixon. Which it's crazy to say, it's great we're getting Johnny Dixon back. I mean, a couple of years ago, if Johnny Dixon had said, I'm transferring or whatever the case is, people have been like, oh, okay, bye, Johnny, good luck. Now it's like, hey, Johnny, why don't you come back for one more year? I mean, that was how good of a season he had last year, at least the first half of the year, and then he kind of disappeared in the second half, or at least after that Iowa game. He really, didn't hear from him at all practically. But, this is going to be a just a stacked team, man. They are going to be so stacked next year, and I don't want to place that, I don't want to place that on them that they should go to the college football playoff or else, if they don't, it's not a successful season. I mean, after what happened to Iowa last year, Chris, and I said this time and time again, I'm kind of beating a dead horse with it, but seriously, to go 12-2 last year after what happened at Iowa, to beat an undefeated 4th-ranked Wisconsin for the Big Ten championship, and then go out there and dominate USC in the Cotton Bowl, a New Year's Six bowl game, and beat USC, something they had not done in 8 or 7 straight games. They had not beaten USC since friggin' 1974. And to go out there and do that, I think this was a hell of a season. And I'm proud of the way that they responded after that Iowa game. But I'm not going to sit there and put that kind of pressure on their head that they have to go, play in the college football playoff or else this 2018 season is going to be worthless. Now, if they don't win the Big Ten, or at least if they don't play for a Big Ten title and they go 9-4 or something and, play, Georgia Tech in the Capital One Bowl, I might be a little disappointed with the year, considering the talent that they have coming back. But otherwise, I'm not going to sit here and say college football playoff or else. But I'm feeling pretty damn good about it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And speaking of the playoffs, I'm going to make a little observation here. Ohio State's defensive line was better than Alabama's defensive line. USC's offense was tremendously better than Clemson's offense. Many people felt Ohio State should have been in there over Alabama. You saw what Alabama's defensive line did to Clemson's offense. Destroyed it. I'm watching that and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? We would have dominated them just as much as Alabama did, if not more, because they couldn't, just look at that. Ohio State's defensive line was better than Alabama's. And USC's, look at what Ohio State did to USC's offense.
Yeah.
So it's like
just
would have been
broke them down.
I think they would have went through Clemson even more so than they would have USC. And it's like when I looked at the top 5 teams, which was the 4 in my ranking, I had the same top 4, and in addition to Ohio State. But I was like, you know what? I have pretty much 4 of these teams tied. And the number 5 team I had was Clemson. So to me, it was like Clemson's ranked number 1, but in my mind, they're the 5th worst out of these teams. I understand why they're there. It's not always about who necessarily looks the best on the field. It's kind of who you beat, when you lost. Timing makes a lot of makes a lot of weight in the decision and all of that. But I felt Clemson was the weakest of all those teams. And I'm like, man, we had our shot to be playing for the national title, to get our revenge on Clemson, and just pissed it away, all because of that stupid Iowa loss. And, it's like, I don't know that we would have beat Georgia. I think the way Georgia shut down a running quarterback in Jalen Hurst, they would have did the exact same thing to Urban and JT. And I don't know that Urban would have had the balls to do what Nick Saban did, which was amazing, to pull his starting quarterback and put in a true freshman in the middle of the national title game. He's got some brass ones. And
so what do you think of that decision? I mean, obviously it paid off because this Toa Tagovailoa Lualaya, however you say it, won him the game. And Jalen Hurts was doing nothing. Yeah, there in the first half. Was that the decision of the year, the decade, in all of college football history? I mean, that was nuts.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to say all of college football history.
Well, I wouldn't either, but
my God, was that an amazing call by a coach who has now separated himself from the pack.
Yep.
In the past, I was saying, it's pretty much Urban and Saban, and with recent success, I'm like, maybe Dabo is starting to pull himself into that top 3. And I think probably he is still in the top 3, but Saban has separated himself. He is clearly number 1. He just is. And that was a decision that I don't think Urban's going to make it because, look, the Big Ten championship game, JT had 6 days of rest after having freaking knee surgery, and he's hobbling around out there. If there was ever a time where you put your backup in, a guy who just won the game for you at Michigan, who came in and Michigan couldn't stop him, Michigan a really good defense. If there was ever a time you could do it, and you wouldn't even have to like make it seem like JT lost his job. You'd be like, dude, he just had surgery 6 days ago. You totally like spun it that way. No problems in the locker room. No problems like hurting anyone's feelings. And he's put a hobbled quarterback out there to play. So, Urban has shown he's not as good as Saban. Saban will make those hard decisions. He'll look at what's going to be best to win and do it. And the way Urban handled the quarterback situation this year, I don't think he made the best decisions for what was going to be the best for us to win. So, yeah, he separated himself. I mean, Urban's still great. I love him. Wouldn't trade him for anybody. But, yeah, Saban, wow. I mean, and I credit Woody. Saban is he's another one of the great coaches from the Woody Hayes coaching tree. And, Urban being included in there, Jimmy Tressel. I guess Jimmy Tressel is a JT. Jimmy Tressel's in there among many others, but that Woody Hayes coaching tree just keeps getting more and more illustrious.
Yeah, Nick Saban, that was unbelievable. Ballsy move. And obviously, would Urban have done the same thing? I mean, unless JT got hurt, like the Michigan game, yeah, I'm sure he would not have pulled a fifth-year senior captain for a red shirt freshman. In Nick Saban's case, though, and I'm going to defend Urban a little bit for keeping JT Barrett in the game when maybe the offense could have been boosted a little bit by Dwayne Haskins. I think that would have been very, very tough if Urban was in a situation where the team is losing, maybe a la Iowa, where your fifth-year senior captain has thrown 4 interceptions, including a game-starting pick 6, to put a redshirt freshman in. To pull a fifth-year senior captain and put a redshirt freshman in, that's a tough call to make. Now, Nick Saban only had to pull a sophomore for a true freshman. And I don't think Jalen Hurts is a captain. And I think that was an easier decision for Nick Saban to be able to make, to pull a sophomore who's only had 1 year starting, well, 2 years basically, because he started all of last year and then started, all of this year. 2 years starting for a redshirt freshman who hadn't played a whole lot. That was still ballsy, but it would have been even ballsier had Jalen Hurts been a fifth-year senior captain like JT Barrett and gotten pulled for a freshman. That would have been even crazier. And I'm not so sure I would fault, or even look at the Iowa game, I'm not so sure that I fault Urban for sticking with a fifth-year senior, even though he's having a horrible game. We all think, Dwayne Haskins, he's going to be the great elixir. Well, who's to say that he comes in and doesn't play just as bad? I mean, yeah, Haskins looked great in mop-up time and did a damn good job up there at Michigan to come in and help, take Ohio State, give Ohio State the lead, and essentially win the game. Made some incredible throws, especially the one there on 3rd and 13 to Austin Mack. Will go down in history as one of the greatest catches in Ohio State-Michigan game history, if not maybe even Ohio State, at least recent history. But, it's tough to say. And once again, I can't fault Urban for sticking with a fifth-year senior captain, above a redshirt freshman. That's just me.
Yeah, well, and also JT is the 2-time offensive MVP of the Big Ten. Jalen Hurts was never offensive MVP, so it is different. It's not apples and oranges, or it's not apples to apples.
Apples and apples, yeah.
But if there was ever an opportunity to pull your starting quarterback, it was that Big Ten title game, and it was in disbelief that he put a hobbled quarterback out there. So.
No, and that's true. Hey, the first half, Ohio State looked great. JT had a couple of great throws, especially that one there to McLaurin. I mean, wide open, and, McLaurin just got separation and dusted his dude. Of course, the swing pass to Campbell, I mean, all he had to do was just throw it over to the sideline, and Campbell did the rest. But second half there, yeah, they Wisconsin came with it, kind of broke Ohio State down, only allowed a couple of field goals, and Ohio State was still able to get the win with their fifth-year senior captain. But would it have looked a little different maybe had Haskins been in there and they let JT rest? Because that is kind of crazy that he would say, okay, you just had surgery 6 days ago and you feel ready to play, and who knows, maybe JT's like, look, coach, I really want to play, come on, please, and Urban's just like, all right, dude, shut up, you're gonna play. Who knows what the case is, but yeah, you're right. That would have been as good of an instance as any to let him sit, let him rest, get him ready for the bowl game, and let Dwayne Haskins come in. But I mean, that was for the Big Ten championship, right? Big Ten title. You had also national title implications laying on the line. Once again, Urban, he's going to rely on that fifth-year senior captain who's gotten him so many wins and gotten him to that point pretty much in the season, rather than letting him sit and having the redshirt freshman come in and try and win the game from the start. Because remember the Michigan game, even though they were losing there in the third quarter, JT still brought them back and tied that game up at the end of the first half. And then, yes, Michigan came out and scored in the third quarter to take that 20-14 lead, and then the very next drive, JT did get hurt, and it was pretty crazy that Dwayne came in and did do the things he did to help lead them back to a win. But it wasn't like Dwayne Haskins did everything in that Michigan game himself. He had some help. He did have his fifth-year senior captain going out there and playing the first half and at least bringing them back to tie up the game. Yeah, that's got to be a huge confidence booster right there if you're a redshirt freshman. And then especially, that fifth-year senior goes down, you get your number called. At least you're like, well, the fifth-year senior captain went out there and warmed the team up for me. Now I'm going to kind of come in and do my job. And he did it well. I'm not trying to take anything away from Dwayne Haskins, but I'm just saying that there was some help there that he had in that Michigan game.
Yeah, he didn't do it all on his own. I will always believe that was the wrong decision by Urban, but yeah, he certainly. I don't have a crystal ball. It's possible. Yeah. Haskins, if he comes out there in the beginning, who knows what would have happened? Maybe he would have thrown 6 picks in the first half. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, sir, did we not cover anything that you wanted to get to, or have we gotten our fill of Buckeye football in at least for another week? Because come next week is the second official signing date, and I think there's still a couple of kids that Ohio State's keying on, so I'm sure we're going to be talking about that come next weekend.
Yep. No, I mean, there's more I would love to talk about, but for the sake of our listeners, so this is getting a little long in the tooth, this episode, so let's go ahead and close it up.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. He is the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan, Mr. Chris Stefanick. And, sir, once again, I appreciate you coming along and talking a little OSU football. And if they want a little more Chris Stefanick in their life, where do they need to go? We kind of said it in the beginning of the show, but let's say it once again in case they forgot, because, yes, we've gone a little long in the tooth. They might have forgotten by now.
Yep, choiceconversations.com. That's my personal development podcast. Come on over, and I'll help you to improve your life in all the different areas. So I'd love to have you as a listener. choiceconversations.com.
There you go. Hit him up at choiceconversations.com. The Intergalactic Buckeye Fan himself, Mr. Chris Stefanick. This episode of the Buckeye Leafcast also brought to you by Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's not clean until it's Christy clean. Be sure to visit her Facebook page at Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's also brought to you by Columbus Wired, for your premier source for sports in and around the central Ohio area and beyond. Check us out at columbuswired.net. So there you go, sir. Yeah, we'll have to talk recruiting, even though it's pretty much done. But like I said, I know there's a couple guys left the Buckeyes are keying in on. So once they sign those guys, I'm sure we'll be talking about that and maybe a few other things that have come along since then, because you just never know. Right now, things are kind of a crazy whirlwind with Buckeye football.
Absolutely.
There you go, sir. Let's leave like we always do. OH!
I-O.
Go Bucks!
I want to go back to Ohio State, to old Columbus town, to the stadium to hear the band, by far the finest in the land. I want to go back to Ohio State, to old Columbus town. I want to go back.